Hello everyone, Wario Dude 128 here. I've decided that I'm going to read for you an essay that I wrote called Why Wario Land 3 is the most unique Metroidvania ever made. Yeah, I wrote that, and I am going to read it to you right now. It goes as follows. The genre of video games known as Metroidvania has been around since at least the mid-1980s. The name is a combination, or portmanteau rather, of two seemingly unrelated video game franchises. Those being Metroid, which got its start in 1986, and Castlevania, which was also released the same year. However, the term itself didn't really come about until the 1997 release of the Castlevania entry for the PlayStation with the subtitle Symphony of the Night. The things both the original Metroid game and Symphony of the Night had in common are an interconnected world with parts of it blocked off to you until you obtain a certain item or ability allowing you to proceed. Many times these abilities are acquired by defeating bosses throughout the game, while other times they are doled out through story progression. Most of the time, these games are done in 2D, but exceptions do exist despite what some purists may tell you. Meanwhile, in the year 1989, the game Super Mario Land was released for the original Game Boy. The second game in the series, released in 1992, subtitled The Six Golden Coins, introduced the world to Mario's evil counterpart, Wario. The name, Wario, happens to be a portmanteau of the Japanese word warui, which in English means bad, and the name Mario, making Wario a bad Mario, as it were. 2 years later, the world was introduced to the third game in the Super Mario Land series, which also carried the subtitle Wario Land. The game starred Wario as the main character, and decided to do its own thing while leaving almost any trace of Mario behind, with one notable exception at the end. Spoilers for a game over 20 years old, by the way. The game was popular enough for a franchise to be made. One game made for the Virtual Boy, which by all accounts is one of maybe two worth owning the system for, and a direct sequel named Wario Land 2 in 1998, with an updated Game Boy Color version playable on a regular Game Boy later that year. In the year 2000, these seemingly unrelated franchises, Metroid, Castlevania, and Wario Land, ended up walking into a bar. Wario Land happened to sit in the middle on the middle stool, while Metroid and Castlevania sat on opposite sides of it. They got to talking and decided to work together on a project. The result of the project? Wario Land 3 for the Game Boy Color. Yes, Wario Land 3 decided to follow the groundwork first put forth by the Metroid series and a bit by the most recent console 2D Castlevania game to create one similar enough to other Metroidvanias made around the same time. It is also so drastically different from them, a game that does the same things Wario Land 3 did, had not been made before, and so far has not been made since. To explain why, let us go back to how Metroidvania games usually work. In a typical Metroidvania, the world you play in is all interconnected. That means you can go anywhere in the world you want, provided you have the items and abilities needed to get there. If you are missing said items and or abilities, you are basically forced to travel along a fairly linear path through the world. Along the way, you might see items or pathways, which look interesting, but which you are not able to access. Then it happens. You defeat a boss, or some major event occurs, which lets you gain access to a brand new ability or item or ability. You can now perform an action or move which, when executed properly, will let you gain access to one of the areas you previously came across, but were unable to get into because you didn't have this item or ability before. Also, you will most likely have an in-game map, which will show you all the previous areas of the world you have been, with little hints showing that there might be an alternate exit in some of them. It often helps to have a map, so this is a very useful thing to have. Now, take everything previously said about what pretty much sums up every Metroidvania game and think about how it could be subverted. Wario Land 3 did so, and decided to have some very unique takes on the genre. First of all, there is no in-game map. Instead, the game is split up into levels, which you access from an overworld map. When you enter a level, the only thing you have are your moves, and that's about it. The moves, by the way, are shoulder bash, jump while shoulder bashing, crouching, and using an incline to turn yourself into a ball and take out almost anything in your way until you hit a solid object. There are more moves you can perform with power-ups, but more on them later. Each level has two main goals. The first is to find a rotating colored key, and the second is to find the treasure chest that matches it. Sometimes the chest is found first, at which point the goal is to search for the key and obtain it before getting back to where you saw the chest. The contents of which are where things get really interesting. You see, when you unlock the chest and beat the level, the item you get isn't just a neat little doodad to look at in your collection. Instead, the item found in a treasure chest is used to either alter the landscape of the overworld map, or alter a level you had beaten previously. For example, in the level Out of the Woods, the treasure you get is an axe. A cutscene is played, showing it being used, and on the overworld, a tree suddenly falls over, and lets you access 2 levels you couldn't before. In the level The Big Bridge, you get a seed of sorts that creates 3 more. The seeds fly off and fall onto previous levels, showing that they have been altered in some way. Not every change of a previous level can be seen on the overworld map, of course, and there is many an instance where the item you found in a chest is actually one of 2 or 3 needed to open a way to a new level or change the look of a previous one. Also, some treasures really are neat little doodads to look at in your collection. If you ever wonder what it is you should do next, you can always visit an area called the Temple and get told where you should go to continue the main story, such as it is. Every so often, a treasure you obtain is actually a power-up, which means you now have a new ability to traverse a previous level. Unlike other treasures, the power-ups don't alter the levels. They change your moves. For instance, a cheeky frog in the level Out of the Woods looks like he can be stomped on. After getting the blue overalls from the volcano's base, you can then stomp on him and gain access to a new treasure you couldn't before. That said, you will still get a helpful cutscene after getting the power-up showing where you can try out your new ability to get a new treasure and beat the level. If you ever forget what you can do, there's a helpful action help section on the pause screen which shows a looping demo of what you're capable of doing. Later power-ups, which you don't have, are shown as shadows until you obtain them, so it is as good an incentive as any to get every one. Ever seen a Metroidvania game have a day/night system? Wario Land 3 has one. Every time you beat a level, the time of day changes from day to night, or night to day, depending on when you finished a level. What time of day it is on the world map actually alters the levels in different ways. During the night, enemies might be snoozing on the ground and wake up suddenly when you get near them. Other times, an enemy you see in the level during the day is replaced by a completely different enemy at night. An owl that is flying about at night and just out of reach might land and be sleeping during the day, allowing you to wake it up. Grab hold of a leg and use it to fly around the level. Later power-ups will make these day and night differences irrelevant, but for a good chunk of the game it really does change how the levels play. How many Metroidvania games, or games in general, have a life bar of some sort? Not Wario Land 3, that is for sure. Not only can Wario not be hurt, there is no way for him to die except for when you get caught in an applause from the final boss. Instead, you get inflicted with a number of status effects that hinder your progress. Some of them, however, are actually required to get through parts of a level. Some status effects needed to beat a level include being flattened, set on fire, rolled up into a ball of string, frozen solid, turned invisible by an old man throwing a bottle of something at you, and made incredibly fat. Getting flattened allows you to get through tight spaces. Getting set on fire lets you break blocks with a little fire symbol on them. Getting turned into a ball of string lets you break blocks that have a ball of string on them. Getting frozen solid is often something that hinders your progress, but also lets you pass through certain obstacles no problem. Getting turned invisible lets you bypass what seem to be security systems, and being made fat lets you jump on and break blocks with a donut on them. Most of these wear off after a bit of time, while others require finding something to get you out of your affected state. As for how bosses deal with you if they can't chip away at your health bar, oftentimes they cause a status effect on you which kicks you out of the room they're in. A golf minigame is not something you often see, but in Wario Land 3 there is one. In fact, it is the only thing you can spend the coins you get on. Not only that, but if you get the musical coins in every level, of which there are 8, then you can access a course you would not be able to otherwise in a special part of the world map, which, by the way, you can only access after getting 7 crayons that color the landscape in one part of the overworld. The minigame does take a little while to get used to, but you had better do so since beating it is required to get past minigame clear blocks placed in the levels. The game is not perfect, however. If you try going into levels counter to what the hidden figure at the temple says you should, you could end up going for the last treasure in a level without being able to collect the 8 musical coins and thereby never having to go into it again. Also, if you despise the golf minigame, getting an extra course in the special part of the map where you can play it whenever you want will not be much fun. Time attack mode, which asks you to find the 4 colored keys and then enter a door where a treasure chest used to be, is next to useless. The list of treasures you have gets reset to the first page of 5 whenever you go back to the overworld and then leave the game, which is a little annoying. There is no pausing the game in the middle of a boss fight, but it might be for the best, all things considered. Finally, you can completely miss one of the status effects that can be inflicted on Wario if you always take the Hidden Figure's advice, at least while on your quest to find the 5 music boxes. That quest lets you obtain around half the treasures in the game, and the rest are found after the final boss is put back in his place and you get tasked with cleaning up the rest. The only real reward for completing the game is Wario giving you a thumbs up, while the word PERFECT flashes on screen with an upbeat tune that plays until you turn off the game. These problems could easily have been addressed if the next game in the series carried on with what the third one brought to the table. Sadly, it was not to be. Instead, the next game let Wario keep all of his abilities and went in a completely different direction. Not only that, but opening a treasure chest was no longer the end goal of the level, but just something to open along the way. It is a real shame that no other game has attempted to replicate all of the things Wario Land 3 did, while also fixing the issues brought up before. A game or two has done maybe one mechanic that was similar, but not to the extent this one did. With everything detailed in this essay, perhaps now you understand why Wario Land 3 is the most unique Metroidvania ever made. So yes, that was the essay that I wrote about Wario Land 3, which is my favorite game of all time, if you didn't guess already. I hope you liked it, and that you come back again when I do another random video. So until then, I will see you next time.